problems facing New Zealand's primary sector have been mounting at a rapid pace. So I think it's time for open hearts and open minds. Welcome to our second edition of Sarah's Country, bringing you the matters that matter most live every night across over 10 plus social media platforms and of course on the Farmers Weekly website farmersweekly.co.nz/Sarah's Country. Exciting news. Of course, the ink hasn't yet hit the paper to be official, but Farmers Weekly, I think, has been deemed as an essential service, and the papers will continue to hit your mailboxes every week throughout the lockdown. Well done to the Farmers Weekly team for their tenacity to get through so much uncertainty. Great result. It really was. The political parties across the board all coming together to address what simply was an anomaly very promptly. Actually, talking about political parties, we're going to catch up with the Prince of the Provinces, Mr. Shane Jones, after 7:20. He has been sticking up for essential media to continue, which is great. So I used the opportunity to ask him, is he now eating his words about calling farmers rednecks? Loving your interaction last night, team. It's really just starting to try and warm up your thumbs on those comments, and I kind of want you to up the ante tonight. We'll get into what the poll is soon, but I certainly want lots of questions coming in for our two great live guests that are going to be later in the show. The Shearing Contractors Association is urging farmers to get ahead of the game and talk to their contractor as soon as possible. However, crutching especially needs to be done for animal health reasons. All of your questions for the President of the Shearing Contractors Association live here on Sarah's Country after 7:30. And then at 20 to 8, I'm joined by the Tuan's boss, Craig Young. There's not too much that Craig doesn't know about broadband, and in particular rural broadband. So I want all your questions about that. And that leads me to the poll tonight. I want to know, has your rural broadband not changed since the lockdown? It's sort of 25% worse or 50% plus worse. So we're sort of going to get a gauge, which is kind of a little ironic to do that on a live video, I understand. If you are struggling to watch the stream, we have a live radio broadcast. So if you head to farmersweekly.co.nz/Sarah's Country, you can just push play and listen to this on audio. It'll be better for your bandwidth and if you are obviously walking around doing other things. It just makes me really question, and I'm really looking forward to talking to Craig, because Vodafone, don't worry, we'll offer you the same as your urban cousins, but only after midnight. It just seems just another, they don't understand us. So suggesting that we should download Netflix after midnight and low peak times. Can someone tell me how you download Netflix? Isn't it meant to be a streaming service? But thank God for the Rugby World Cup and preparing, older generations like Bob. He went out and bought a smart TV and he actually knows how to use it now. So hopefully then we can move into watching interactive shows like Sarah's Country, where you can stream from the YouTube channel. You look at Sarah's Perium on YouTube and you'll be able to stream there. So talking about sport, I love talking about sport. But it is a sad day about radio sport being shut down. So I thought, I don't really have lashes like Jamie Mackay has lashes, but I've got my rock, the Rock. J-Rock.
Hello.
You are keeping me entertained of all of the stuff that you can see on social media that is great ways that people are keeping fit in isolation. Do you want to share with our audience?
Well, I think my favourite one that I've come across is a man back in Ireland who has ran a marathon in his driveway. Let's put a picture up there. Yeah, that's him there. He's running with a wheelbarrow and he did it to raise money for the NHS working away.
So he did. He did. Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, I've heard stories of farmers putting golf courses on their farm and all sorts. So there's some pretty funny ways that people are trying to keep fit around the country. So and if you missed last night's show and don't know the drill, I just want to let you know how to interact, because that is the whole point of the show that makes it set apart from anything else. Farmersweekly.co.nz/Sarah's Country. You will be able to ask questions of our guests, give me ideas or people some ideas, and of course participate in the poll. I actually had a question come in, and I really want questions like this to come in, because then I can then go and get guests tomorrow night booked to be able to answer some of your questions. This person said, "Hey Sarah, with the drought, COVID-19 and the hold up at the meatworks, it's almost the perfect storm. What timeline are meatworks giving to take more stock?" Well, what I do know is that a press release has just come out from MIA, Meat Industry Association, and Beef and Lamb New Zealand, that new protocols are going to be introduced, that processing companies are going to have to follow to be able to operate during the lockdown, and it will actually dramatically impact processing capacity. So they're asking farmers to please plan ahead and have clear lines of communication with your procurement agent, and prepare for some slow up in the supply chain. So, moving on, we want to talk about, one of the reasons why people like Joel decided to come with his girlfriend, Joel, my producer, is because New Zealand's so popular for the freedom of being able to get outdoors. And tourism has had a hammering from this darn virus. So first tonight on Sarah's Country, we're heading to the South Wairarapa to catch up with Lisa Porteous from Palliser Ridge to get her advice on keeping calm and carrying on about our agri-tourism sector's future, because it's so important for being able to navigate our narrative around how food is produced. A 10-pot isolation after isolation. And I just want to go to all of the amazing, beautiful retreats on farms like Palliser Ridge. So I want your ideas tonight in the Facebook Live comments below. Tag your best on-farm accommodation providers that you think that I should visit as you watch this from Global HQ. And stay on farm at Palliser Ridge, where Lisa and Kurt Porteous farm in their equity partnership. Joining me now is Lisa to discuss the effects of the shutdown on their agri-tourism operation, as well as taking the opportunity, why not, to discuss her Kellogg's report on how New Zealand food producers can navigate their narrative. But firstly, Lisa, let's set the scene for the viewers and listeners. Your role as an extension manager, I liked that, to create this diverse business that you have at Palliser Ridge.
Yeah. Hey, so the expansion manager, that was may have been a bit of a made up term at the time. We just decided that that's anything that didn't fall under Kurt's role of the core business fell under here. So it's a bit of a mixed bag to begin with. But now it's all about looking after anything that's not that core business of sheep and beef. So that for us includes some on-farm tourism, some accommodation, and also any traceable products. So we send out honey and lamb and a range of wool, Romney lamb's wool, and send that out with a bit of a backstory to it. And then I get to look after any marketing and try and make it as successful as possible.
Kurt's quite the model too. I have interviewed him in the past about these lamb's wool suits.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so that's he's been given a fair lot of grief for that at the rugby club and down in the valley, as you can imagine. But look, so neat to know that over in the UK at Marks and Spencer, that they're hearing about New Zealand wool, and I guess seeing someone who's looking after the sheep and understands that welfare side. So that was where a lot of the Marks and Spencer side came with Wools of New Zealand, was all about the responsible wool standard and just all the good things that New Zealand sheep and beef farmers are doing, and how customers can feel really good about supporting that product.
And those customers getting the opportunity to stay at Palliser Ridge and understand the uniqueness of our food and fibre production, how crucial is that you can see the development of their knowledge and the narrative, like you say, of that story?
Yeah, it's a really, we get a real kind of mixed bag of people who come and stay. You've kind of got a lot of people who want to come in and get a taste of what we have every day, and that's that, being away from the city and being back to nature and just having a bit of that quiet time. So some of the guests we don't see, but the other half of them who really want to come and immerse themselves and kind of do a bit of a day in the life of, or come and talk to us about what day-to-day life is like for us. And quite often they've got some questions around maybe something they've seen on the news or something along those lines, and it's always really satisfying to be able to show them and explain to them firsthand, exactly what we're doing here and that we are proud of it, and some of the things they're hearing maybe aren't quite 100% sometimes.
So farming is obviously deemed an essential service, but there's a lot of products and services that Palliser Ridge can't operate at the moment, and one of them being tourism. How much is it affecting your business?
Yeah, look, it's a hard one. We're all about, playing by the rules and making sure that we all do our part to get rid of COVID-19 here. So, look, we've taken heaps of precautions on the farm, but for the expansion side, it was basically stopped in its tracks overnight, particularly the tourism, and that's a real shame. But look, we've had a really good response for the kind of dozen to 15 people who were staying during that 4-week now lockdown period. We've been able to move them, either to other dates or let them hold it in a credit so that they can come and stay again. And the only real cancellations have been those international guests who obviously have a lot of uncertainty, whereas a lot of our market, particularly for what we're doing, has been urban New Zealand, who thankfully are still being quite supportive as this kind of plays out.
Let's jump into your wonderful Kellogg's report that you can all have a read if you go to ruralleaders.co.nz. Farmer storytelling. It's something that we constantly, like a bit of a broken record now, Lisa, need to tell our story better. But how?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And when I was looking at the topic, I thought, man, this has this been done to a death? We're hearing this all the time. But where I wanted to come at it from was, we've got a lot of amazing marketing. We've got a lot of fantastic kind of bodies that can give us a hand with getting our New Zealand story out there. But, sometimes, and particularly when I was doing Kellogg's, it was when there was a lot of regulation coming through to the ag sector, which doesn't show a lot of signs of stopping. But, that's something that made people want to say, look, I actually have something to say about this, and what you're saying about my business isn't true, or I want to influence some of these decisions. And so what I was looking to try and research was, what are the basics of getting some of these stories out and some of this knowledge out, and sharing what it is that we're doing on farms, so that Joe Blogg's farmer who wants to weigh in and hasn't touched Facebook before or hasn't done any marketing can really understand the best way to communicate their point.
What do you think about us moving from storytellers to truth tellers?
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the most interesting parts of probably the beginning of my project, was defining what a storyteller was, and just really moving away from that concept that being a storyteller comes with connotations of kind of maybe making the truth stretch or that kind of thing. So it's really about just sharing knowledge and sharing experiences, and so that people can understand what's happening. So I think it's that sharing knowledge piece. When I think about if I thought about your role or any of your fantastic guests from last night, I don't know completely what it is they do. I might think that I know, but I don't completely know what they do day in, day out. And I think it's important to remember that, urban New Zealand or whoever else in New Zealand who aren't on farm with us every day probably don't understand our role either.
And being a part of the Open Farms Day we had, which actually wasn't that long ago, how much can happen in such a short amount of time. The ability to experience teaches us so much, and gives us that framework to learn the knowledge in a really busy information overload world that we're in, to take the time to understand. That must be one of the most rewarding things for you to extend and expand Palliser Ridge's sheep and beef farming operation into tourism.
Definitely. It's been something that we've been doing on farm and been really proud of, and I think a lot of horticulture sector you've had a family friend or you've shared these experiences with people. And I think when we can be face to face with people, we get that kind of common ground and that common interest, and we can really talk about some of these things and get on the same page. And I just think Open Farms particularly was invaluable for that. Just the amount of questions we fielded that day, but they were awesome. It was really neat to have people leave, as having a really good understanding of what we do and feeling really proud of what we do. So that was what was the best part for us, I think. And also some of the things we enjoy about our tourism arm of the business as well.
It's quite scary that our borders may be in lockdown for a lot longer than the domestic lockdown. Lisa, what would your advice be to farmers watching that have always had an interest in getting into agritourism, but probably put off now because of the business opportunity being so far away? And how can we sort of pre-plan that when we do open our borders, we're in a better position to be ready to tell our story through on-farm experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, firstly, my hope is that the Open Farms continues, and that becomes not just only a New Zealand kind of annual day, but that any tourists in our areas on those days are really hearing about it and coming along to that too. But I think this next 4 weeks, particularly for myself, I'm kind of there's all the kind of come down from going into lockdown, and then what do you do next? And I think it's a neat time to just revisit things and look at our own back doorstep. We've got a lot of, domestic tourism that I think, excuse me, for us has been really successful. A lot of our accommodation visitors are from Wellington. We're about an hour and a half from the capital. So that's been really helpful. And also we've had a real range of New Zealanders come to the farm. So I think while there's a massive role to play for the international tourism market, we can feel pretty confident that New Zealanders are hearing the message that when this is over, we need to get out and support each other. And, and farmers are doing a fantastic job of holding up these, getting some stuff to the supermarkets and really playing a vital role. I'd like to think that we'll see some of this, come back. And if we have these tourism ventures ready, that the rest of New Zealand will come to the party and really support us.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, especially as a mum with some rugrats running around. I'm sure. How are they coping with it being locked inside and self-isolating?
Yeah, they're not too bad. They are. Our boys are 4 and 7, and we've had a lot of comments saying, how fantastic because they can join you on the farm. But unfortunately, these two just don't understand the concept of self-isolating. And if they saw one of our team, would not hesitate to go and see them. So, yeah, so they're at home with mum, and there's a lot of colouring in and Legos and triathlon time trials going on around here. So. Yeah, we'll keep at it. They're doing pretty well. Fantastic.
That's Lisa Porteous from Palliser Ridge in the Wairarapa joining us there to talk about the effects of COVID-19 on their agritourism business. I actually just had an idea while speaking to Lisa. When we get out of lockdown, I'm going to trip around as much of these amazing farm stays as possible in every weekend that I can. Please, I'd love to hear your comments below, your favourite on-farm stay accommodation. I want to get all your ideas and places to go. I've already jacked up to see the Craws on Banks Peninsula. I'm definitely going to come and see the Porteouses at Palliser Ridge. But yeah, give me your ideas on places that I can stay. Glamping on farms, even the old shearers' quarters, musterers' huts. I can rough anything. So thank you so much, Lisa, for taking the time, and we'll be back shortly after this break.
Growing a better world takes courage. It takes foresight and vision. It's about dreaming big, then being brave enough to follow that dream through. To create a world where food is plentiful, soils are healthy, and rivers run crystal clear. A world where we grow more with less, where livestock is tended to with care. Energy is friend, not foe, and waste is a valuable resource. This is the world you're already shaping through imagination, innovation, and determination. So as small steps become huge leaps, you move boldly forward. And Rabobank is there beside you to help grow a better world together.
We're a large deer farm and very proud deer farmer at that. I grew up here as a little boy. It is just an amazing lifestyle. I could never live in a city ever again. Just the big open spaces and just the peacefulness of it all. I think deer are very majestic, very intelligent animal. Having deer that are under pressure or anything like that, or overstocked, they really don't perform as well. You should really be spreading them out on beautiful pastures, keeping them happy. A happy deer is a good deer. And good feed, good grass. We renew our pastures all the time in the paddocks, so we're always getting the best quality grass. Well, I guess in the wild, though, they don't have the luxury of the grass that we put in front of them here as a farmed animal. I believe we've got some of the best English-type deer in the country, if not the world. And to associate our brand with Silver Fern Farms brand works for us. Without the likes of Silver Fern Farms, then there's no point doing this. So they're very, very important for us. I'm Mark Tapley, very proud suppliers of venison to Silver Fern Farms.
Income away from international students, and with tourism effectively decommissioned by COVID-19, Minister for Regional Development Shane Jones says it was not time to impose further regulation on our other major export earner, of course, the agricultural sector. He joins me now. Shane, how has your conversations been in the last week or two with Minister David Parker on the effectively another whack with the onslaught of the release of freshwater and biodiversity reforms?
Well, the New Zealand First Caucus is very solid on this issue. However, we want to work constructively as a part of our coalition government with with colleagues who have responsibility. I would say to you, it's not only water-based regulations, there's also a host of marine-based regulations. And given that we're likely to have 15% of our population looking for jobs, we're going to have to pare back the types of regulations we would have considered appropriate in a time of bountifulness, but that's not what we're looking at.
Okay, before we get into some of these proposals and programs that are currently underway and sort of where the status of them is going to lie, rural media. There has been a bit of a change in the support with a cabinet meeting yesterday, underlying that rural media is actually now an essential service if it isn't daily. What's the general feeling been about that in both the New Zealand First caucus as well as cabinet?
Well, obviously, I can't divulge what happens in Cabinet, but the New Zealand First Caucus were onto this issue within a nanosecond. That's the first thing. The second thing, I grew up in Awanui near Kaitaia. So when I was contacted by Mr. Peter Jackson, the long-standing editor of the Northland Age, a veritable institution in our community in the far north, he was virtually in tears. I sprung into action immediately. I do think that in rural New Zealand, we're going to have to re-establish and recapitalise so much about rural New Zealand that has fallen by the wayside. No more epithets such as the Shabeel, the economist who derided rural New Zealand as zombie towns. Those days are over. Up to $17, $20 billion of international revenue associated with tourism and international students is all vaporised. The only way we're going to replace that income is by expanding our industry, our manufacturing, and to do that, we cannot go forward with constantly sidelining or marginalising the concerns of rural New Zealand. And coming from a farm, being born and bred in Awanui, that's the blood that courses through my body.
What about programs like your 1 Billion Trees program, converting a lot of farmland into forestry with a forestry industry in crisis?
Well, let's just talk about forestry for a moment. Gone are the days where forest owners will rule the roost in terms of the forest industry. The forest industry is going to be a candidate for Crown intervention in terms of expanding and developing the processing and manufacturing capacity, because that's where we'll create jobs. That's where it's important in provincial New Zealand to add value. Now, historically, the power of the forest owners group, up to, I think, 75% of all the forests in New Zealand are owned by international investors. The social license of international investors in forestry has just changed radically. And I'll be able to comment more on that after officials have done us work. I'm prepared to take on the chin that whilst planting trees will absorb a lot of labour, we were already moving towards recalibrating and getting a better balance between which land should go into trees and which should stay in food production. I would say, however, that much of the forestry estate that we now treat as a national economic treasure was actually developed in Depression times. But it is not owned by New Zealanders anymore. It is predominantly owned by foreign owners. Those owners must now redirect their efforts to help turn around the fortunes of the New Zealand economy. They cannot operate purely as wealth machines for distant foreign pension funds.
Are you likely to take on the chin the comment of calling farmers rednecks?
Well, given that I'm the son of a farmer and a school teacher, the grandson of farmers, they know as well as I do. I'm the sort of guy that if you come to Parliament and you want to have a swing at me and use pretty crude language, I'm going to give it straight back to you. But that's now all in the past. Cockies know that the wind blows in the morning and it's peaceful in the evening, and then another wind blows tomorrow.
They certainly do, and we have a lot of expectations more so on them. Shane, going into this 2020 election, firstly, is it likely to be postponed?
Look, I can't comment. There's some constitutional and legal considerations that is exclusively at the level of the Prime Minister. So I can't add anything of value to that question.
What about New Zealand First's campaigning?
Yeah, I think that this is a dynamic situation, and I've already heard some soothsayers in the Fourth Estate. They themselves are a modern form of sort of medicine men, saying that New Zealand First will be a casualty in the recovery. It's quite the opposite. The DNA of New Zealand First is pro-industry. It is the provinces. And we're proud to have been associated with attacking and seeking a greater level of moderation in immigration. That problem's now well and truly taken care of, given that it's highly unlikely that we're going to see the international borders reopened in the short to medium term.
So, what do you think? Minister Jones has thrown his 100% support behind the agricultural industry and the discussions going on there about the freshwater and biodiversity reforms that were likely to be announced in April, May, seem to be now pushed back. So that's a bit of breathing room so that we can concentrate on what's ahead, which is very much, of course, changing every week. Love to know your thoughts and your comments on Shane Jones's comments there. If you put them in the Facebook Live, we'll get back to those after the break.
There are 5 core steps that all pika farmers must undertake to meet their NATE requirements. Register with NATE. If you are a person most involved in the day-to-day management of cattle or deer, you must register in the NATE online system as a pika farmer, even if you only have one animal. Register your location. Once you have registered as a pika farmer, you must register all locations where you are in charge of NATE animals. Each registered premise will be assigned a unique NATE number. This is known as a NATE location and identifies where your animals are. Tag and register your animals. All cattle and deer must be tagged with a NATE-approved RFID tag and registered in the NATE online system within 6 months of birth or before they move off farm, whichever comes first. Record and confirm animal movements. As a pika farmer, you are responsible for ensuring all movements of NATE animals onto and off your registered location are recorded in the NATE online system within 48 hours of the movement occurring. Both the sending and receiving pika have an obligation to record and confirm an animal movement in the NATE online system. The exception being if a pika farmer sends livestock to an accredited entity operating as a meat processor or sale yard. In this case, the accredited entity is responsible for recording the movement on behalf of the sending pika farmer. Keep your NATE account up to date. It is also your responsibility as a pika farmer to ensure all information entered in the NATE online system is correct and updated as required. This includes declaration of livestock death, loss, or intended export of NATE animals, and personal details and contact information. For more information or to request a pika change application, visit osprey.co.nz or call 0800 482 463.
I've been getting your feedback coming in on Facebook Live, and what the topic was that I put out there, if you were listening earlier, was around the conversation with Lisa Porteous from Palliser Ridge and my new idea to go into isolation after isolation. In the weekends and the best of times, I actually like to disappear and get away from people and take the opportunity to boost our domestic tourism, which is very, very important. So I thank you for all the awesome ideas coming in. Kylie Stewart at Rangatiki Farm State, of course, natural place to go. And Shortland's Shed at Shortland Station near Naseby. Yes, Dana, I went to boarding school with Tash, so they've done a great job there on their farm. And Trish Rankin says Jane Hutchings has a nice hut out the back at Kerry. This is going to be good fun, actually. So I don't know whether I should take anyone with me or not. It'd be good. And one thing that would be really nice to be able to do while you're up there glamping away, Joel, is a touch of yoga, as the sun's coming up.
Uh-huh.
You've been trialling a bit of isolation yoga.
Oh, I have. My girlfriend's got me doing some isolation in the mornings before I come in to do this.
Stretch out your fingers before you do a bit of tip-tapping for Sarah's country.
Indeed, indeed.
Do you know that shearers really like a touch of yoga? It keeps them very nimble because they're in obviously few interesting positions for a long period of time.
Oh, right, okay.
So talking about shearing, I am joined on the phone by Mark Barracliff from the New Zealand Shearing Contractors Association from out of Pew Pew. Good evening, sir.
How are you, Sarah?
Very well, thank you. How's the internet with 6 teenagers living with you in isolation?
Yeah, definitely handy. We've got unlimited, otherwise we'd be out the gate in the first 5 minutes. But
what provider are you with?
We're with Spark and Happy Days.
Well, we're going to be talking with Craig Young from Two Ends because the Vodafone people are quite pissed off actually about the unlimited only after midnight. So you're very lucky. And we're running a poll on that actually on the Farmers Weekly website, farmersweekly.co.nz/Sarah's Country. 50% of people's internet is 25% worse. And the rest either no change or 50% plus worse. So, Mark, before we kick into things, has yours dropped off at all?
Nah, we're good. We're no change. We weren't super crazy quick, but we're just steady. So happy days.
Yeah. So on a note that you in your professional world are dealing with the regulations coming around what is an essential service for the shearing members that you represent. Obviously, parts of shearing is flock welfare. And you're urging for farmers to talk to their contractors as soon as possible. What are some of the ways that farmers and shearing contractors can keep themselves safe from COVID-19?
Yeah, well, obviously our world's changed like everyone else's has, and we're just trying to promote good early communication between farmers and contractors, just so you can plan things a bit further ahead, because there's a lot more rules we've got to put in place now to keep A, the farmer safe, and B, the employees as well. We'll keep each other safe really while we're in each other's environments. So even though the farmer may be in the middle of nowhere, the shearing crew could be coming from the middle of town. So town's coming to the country really. It's just a communication yarn, sorry.
That's okay, no worries. You've got some declaration forms that are available on the website.
Yeah, so we're just putting a few systems in place that everyone can follow quite easily, from the farmer through to the employee and the contractor, so everyone knows what each other's jobs are. And it's basically the whole country buying into this yarn to try and nip this in the bud. And we want to play our part, but we still want to be able to shear the sheep in a timely manner. So agriculture is going to be our leader out of this hole, so we want to be there to support the agricultural industry. So you've got to register with MPI to actually even provide that service, and then they can come around and check. But I think just between the farmers doing their bit, the contractors doing their bit, and the employees doing their bit, there's going to be a lot of self-policing going on, and I don't think there's going to be an issue really, because everyone's got each other's best interests at heart. So yeah, I see it's going to flow along quite good. The kicker will be production will be a lot slower. Like, you're not getting the same amount of people rolling out of one van or in a shearing shed. So obviously the output will be a lot slower than normal. Hence, we want that yarn for everyone to plan a bit earlier if they can. And
planning for a 4-week lockdown is one thing. I've just had a question come in that someone's heard the lockdown's going to be extended to 5 weeks, so I don't have any reference of that exactly. But if they have said potentially longer, what's that going to impact going into the months into winter?
Yeah, well, definitely there's an end date that doesn't move, and generally that's once people's animals start to lamb. So that's the big telling factor for a lot of us. Whatever part of New Zealand you're in, you either got to get them shorn or crutched before lambing. So at some point, everyone's going to get affected at different times around the country.
Yeah, there might be a few farmers out there that have to get on a handpiece themselves. They might not be too happy about otherwise. So it's important that we follow very strictly the guidelines around the essential services, Mark. And where can people go to get more information?
We've got just our contractors website. We've got everything on the page here for the public to view, for anyone to do with shearing, just to spread the love around the whole shearing industry, really, and then everyone's on the same page. So just nzshearing.co.nz. That's that.
On a last note, you've got all your sort of tucker places shut down that the shearers love to call in on the way. And, we don't have shearers cooks as much as we used to back in my day when I was a child. Mark, how are they getting on? Are they living off pies from BP?
Yeah. Well, there's lots of different things going on, but yeah, even food preparation and bringing out food is creating a bit of an issue. So everyone's got different ways of dealing with it, from having a cook on site to just bringing your own food. So whatever floats your boat, really, Sarah. As long as you get fed, it's a couple hours work. You're due a decent feed. So yeah, most of the boys are making sure they're not going hungry anyway. I'll tell you that for free.
Oh, and you've got a whole house full to keep not hungry. Do you have a place there, Mark, in Pew that you can escape? A bit of a man cave?
Yeah, we've got a small man cave outside, if you like, full of toys and stuff. So trouble is with my all my teenagers now, they generally follow me out, so it can be busier out there than in the house. But it's great having them all home, and plenty of battens and batten staples and spare hammers at my place. So yeah, they're loving rebattening old fences. So yeah, they'll be hoping it doesn't go beyond 4 weeks, I'll tell you that. Yeah,
I know there's a lot of Lincoln University students, parents who are very happy to have them at home as well, a bit of free labour. So good on you. Mark Barracliff, who is the president of Shearing Contractors Association, joining us live tonight out of Pew. And after the break, we will be catching up live with Craig Young from Tuan. So I want your questions around what can we do to improve rural broadband? When are things going to get better? Why do the telcos operate the way they do? If you want to participate in the conversation, head to farmersweekly.co.nz/Sarah's Country, and you can add your questions in there, but you can also add them in the old comments below. And as well as I want your suggestions. Where am I going to cruise around the country with my old mate Dolly, the miniature schnauzer, in tow? And if I'm allowed to take this on farm, I shouldn't assume actually, that I can go my top 10 isolation after isolation to boost domestic tourism, especially in our agri-tourism sector. So please I want your ideas. Where am I going to head to? I haven't got anything in Southland. Any good places to go in Southland? I'm sure there is. The Catlins is pretty beautiful. And, of course, Hawke's Bay, one of my favourite places, where is some farm accommodation that I can go on my top 10 mission around the country. So that you operate down there below. And, of course, there's a live poll, which we have quite a few participating in. 60% of you have said that the internet's got 25% worse. So, yeah, we're just taking it on that, yeah, it certainly has had a drop-off. But is it, I want to know in the comments, has it really been disruptive, or is it just kind of a bit niggly and a bit of buffering? Is Netflix still working okay, but only certain times of the day? Now, give us a bit of a feel on how that's going in the comments below. Okay, and as I said, after the break, we'll catch up with Craig Young from Tuans.
Aotearoa, New Zealand has always been a land that has provided for its people, a land of abundance and opportunity. Our dedicated team at Ag Research know that embracing kaitiakitanga will see this continue for future generations. The work we do is transforming the way we farm and revolutionising the way New Zealanders care for our animals and for our land. We work hard to create the world's most desirable food and bio-based products through smart, sustainable farming, led by some of the world's most phenomenal research and informed by the consumers who benefit from this passion. Through a focus on environmental sustainability and climate change initiatives, this passion will allow our work to continue for generations to come. Our proficiencies in research run wide, from seeds to pest control, high-value food production to practical farming systems and quality assurance. From the smallest rural land use project to international research programs, our science and technology innovations drive the prosperity of our precious agricultural sector. It's through this research that New Zealand retains its position as a scientifically advanced global agricultural leader. Our commitment to the growth of our wider New Zealand economy, its people, and the kaitiakitanga of Aotearoa is at the very heart of every scientific innovation and creation we deliver. Ag research, firmly grounded in this land, these waters, looking to what's in the stars and the future. Ata matai, matai whetu.
Delicious. Ever wondered where it starts? Does it start with care? Respect. Fresh grass 365 days a year. The truth is, delicious doesn't start in a single moment or with a single ingredient. Delicious starts here.
Looking at that gorgeous food that was just on there. Good to see Justin Courtney's watching. Thank you. Justin said, pleased to hear that you can't eat pine. Yeah, Shane Jones certainly worked that out in his swing back to support for farmers. If you missed that earlier in the show, you can watch the show back on demand. And as of tomorrow, I'll put the full shows up as podcasts as well as individual interviews, because this will be the way that I'll be operating now every day as opposed to the once a week show. So thank you so much for joining us. Oh, I've got somewhere here from the Catlins. Joel, you'll like the Catlins. Burishford Heights. Thank you so much, Katie, for sending that in. And to clarify, Nicola Dennis said that it hasn't been extended for 5 weeks, the lockdown. It's the state of emergency has been extended for 7 days. So now is the time that we're going to cross to Craig Young. Craig, I have been a Vodafone customer for over 10 years now, and I don't think I've ever been so mad at them as when they came out and said, we heard the calls from rural customers. What a quote! And will now offer the same unlimited data as our urban users during COVID-19 lockdown, but from midnight to 9 o'clock. Are they so disconnected from their consumer?
Oh. Yeah, kia ora, Sarah. Well, it's really interesting. Many of your viewers will remember being on some sort of satellite service several years ago where you had free data overnight as well. You know, it's quite it feels like a backward step, but I'm not sure. I think they're trying their hardest because, like, quite honestly, they've got some significant problems with that investment that was made under the RBI1, the Rural Broadband Initiative Phase 1, where 3G in the first instance was rolled out to a significant part of New Zealand. And unfortunately, things have just moved on. And so they just can't keep up.
So the infrastructure of wireless and the bouncing off towers versus a fixed line ADSL connection, is that where the sort of pipeline is being restricted?
Well, I think, yeah, you're talking about different things there, and certainly we hope that there's no ADSL left out there, that Chorus has managed to upgrade their copper networks in different places to make it faster. But unfortunately, most of rural New Zealand is being, well, I wouldn't say unfortunate, but most of rural New Zealand will be getting their broadband wirelessly. Now, the thing that I'm I suppose you're talking about being a Vodafone customer for 10 years. There is still this assumption out there that you have to be with one of the big players to get your broadband. Look, quite honestly, there are lots of options in most places, and the government has put money into local providers. And I've just been doing some research this afternoon to catch up, and there's some really decent sized packages out there, data packages. So people like Promo Wireless over in Taranaki, Wiz Wireless in the Wairarapa, Murinet in the South Island, they've all got 500 gig plans. Now, even if a family uses 30 gigs a day, that's 360 gigs a month. So there are some options out there if you look local. And I really want to support and encourage people to look at their local providers.
Lisa Porteous, who we had earlier in the show in Palliser Ridge, I got her to run a speed test after I interviewed her earlier this afternoon, and she was sitting at 25 meg download on Wiz Wireless. So that's really good, especially for streaming this show.
That's pretty good. You can do most things within about a 25 meg. Most of their plans run out to about 50. But what's happening now, and look, we are in unprecedented waters. I've been posting each day looking at the capacity and the usage on networks, particularly in urban New Zealand, as everybody goes home and works from home. Of course, most people in rural work from home, but in urban areas. And, the actual data usage on the network is increased significantly, 30 to 40% during the day. And so we're seeing quite a shift. And obviously, as the kids leave school, now that schools are shut down, we're starting to see that shift in rural New Zealand as well. And so these networks that aren't engineered to deliver or to carry large amounts of data that we suddenly start to throw at them are starting to creak a little. And it's just physics when it comes to wireless. You just can't deliver the speed and the capacity that we want.
Okay, this is a new normal, and potentially there'll be a lot of good things come out of this, of the way that we work, not entirely every day locked at home, but having the ability to maybe work more from home, and also the Internet of Things and farming starting to get more and more connected with devices on farm. How is 5G going in terms of the process of getting there, and is it going to be like fibre where farming's sitting waiting for 10 years before after town gets it, sort of thing?
Well, I think what you've got to get first in significant parts of rural New Zealand is just getting 4G. I think people who don't have coverage at the moment will see a significant improvement with 4G. So we've got this rollout occurring at the moment where the regional providers, the ones that I talked about earlier, have been rolling out faster wireless broadband, and quite honestly, they're doing a fantastic job. And you ought to be looking in your area if you've got one of those players, because you're supporting local businesses as well, and they can come and help you out in the local. But as the other part of the rollout is the 3 mobile networks working together as one for this group called the Rural Connectivity Group, the RCG. And they are filling in the spaces where the first round of RBI didn't go, and that's true 4G. Now, that's pretty decent broadband once that's installed, but the problem is they've been a little slow at getting out there. They're starting to crank it up now, but we really want to see over the next year or two a lot more rolled out. The beauty of 4G and the devices and the technology that goes in place with 4G is that an upgrade to 5G is not as significant as from 3 to 4. So I don't think 5G in particular is going to be the answer for farmers. I think, or for rural New Zealand, I think it's getting that jump to 4G is the big jump. Now, you talked about IoT. IoT doesn't take a lot of bandwidth, so I don't think we have to worry about that. It's what you're doing, things like video streaming, video conferencing, where it's not just the download, it's the upload as well. Those are sorts of things, the new way of working, that's going to put the pressure on the networks.
Yeah, and of course, someone would think, oh, you're mad going with a live interactive video show every night during a peak time, 7 till 8. People are still very actively watching the show, even though we've just started. And I've got the mindset, Craig, that you can't be, one thing to all people with different levels. So we're going to be multiple things, multiple people. For those who want to listen on podcasts on demand that they download overnight with their Wi-Fi, to a live radio stream of the same show happening right now online as well. So there's all the capacities to be able to consume the same information. But I found this that Steph Holloway has just sent in a message saying that her download speed at the moment is 1.2 meg. And I'm assuming, Steph, that you're watching this right now on that speed. That's pretty good.
Yeah,
I'd like to know how that was coming through.
Yeah, and quite honestly, in today's world, 1.2 meg is not acceptable.
No.
I mean, in the long run, what we really want is for rural and urban New Zealanders to have the same experience. Now, if you can get 50 to 100 megabits per second into your house in rural New Zealand now, that's pretty much the same experience. And there's a few providers out there that are giving you that decent speed. And so you'll be able to do most things like that. But at 1 megabit per second, there's a problem there. You can't work with that really. And it could be all sorts of reasons why that's the case. And if that's the case, you'd have to look at, are you using a local provider or are you using one of the big providers who, the cell phone towers really weren't built to carry that sort of traffic.
Yeah.
We need to invest in that.
And that's the thing too. I mean, I actually worked alongside Vodafone with another hat on 5-6 years ago. And I said to these guys, why don't you sell them the infrastructure? As farmers, they're used to being able to pay large amounts of money to put the power way out to the back woolshed. It's part of farming. So where I live, out towards Little River, they've actually put in their own towers to bounce around the valleys to the houses, but also to turn the irrigators on from their cell phones. So there is a way. I just strongly believe that every farmer or rural person living rurally who has the opportunity just values it differently.
Oh, absolutely. And look, I think I know where you're talking about, because I've got some colleagues up there that are part of that as well. A rural doctor who wants to do some teleconsulting. I think he was part of that deal. I think the beauty about rural New Zealand is that you are innovative and clever, but you've got to have the right people supporting you. And unfortunately, the big players just don't have the capacity and the capability to do different things like that. So you're right. You've got to find people who are local who can help you get services into where you want to get it. And whether that's using cell phone towers or whether that's using different types of technology. I mean, look, in the long run, what would be best is if we could get fibre to everybody, quite honestly, or at least 5G. But that's not going to happen overnight. But we need to keep investing in improving the networks in rural New Zealand.
My father is actually on wireless fibre.
Wireless fibre?
Yeah, so the tower bounces fibre into the house.
Mm-hmm. It's a bit of I'm not sure how that works, because fibre is actually a hard thing, but
yeah, well, okay.
Maybe it's a marketing term, Sarah.
Well, maybe it was, but anyway, it made things go a lot faster, which he was happy about for the World Cup. Right. That was for sure. But where can people go if they do want to invest in, say, a valley or a community or a farm to improve their own infrastructure and take things into their hands? What type of contractors or who do you call? Because you don't really want to sit on a excuse me, call centre line with someone who has no idea.
And this is where you're better to go with someone local. So if you go to a website called wispa.nz, WISPA.nz, that lists all the regional players. There's a map on there. You can click on it, find out who's in your area, and usually you can get onto someone who's local pretty quickly, and they'll be able to tell you what they've got and what they can do. They may use a Vodafone service or a Spark service to actually get it to you, but they'll be there in your local community and be able to understand what's going on. So that's where I'd start these days. No, if you've got good cell phone coverage, then you can go to the big players, because obviously there's a tower that's working for you. And as they upgrade those, you'll get better supply. But in the first instance, go local.
I just want to know some top tips, because Vodafone's trying to tell me how to download Netflix. I thought Netflix was streaming. How do you download your Netflix? I mean, what sort of tips can you do to make the most of that period of time, and how? Yeah.
So the download options tend to be on the apps that are on your devices and not on your smart TV. Your smart TV is very good for streaming, but it's rubbish for watching later, because it has no capacity to store. So if you've got a laptop or an iPad, there is download options for most streaming services. TVNZ doesn't have it at the moment, but certainly Netflix, Prime Video. You'll see beside the name of the show, there'll be a little button. There's a little icon that looks like a little down arrow, and that's where you can download those. Quite honestly, though, who's going to get up at midnight to download it? I'm not quite sure. But, that's the other side of it. I think this is a temporary measure, and we just got to keep, we keep talking to them about, well, what else can you do to help out? Is there something the government needs to do to release up some spectrum, for example? So the thing with wireless is it's all about spectrum. It's about how much bandwidth you can get. So maybe there's some stuff that the government can do to help them out. And it's the same for the wireless providers. They're small local companies. I mean, they're all going to start feeling the stress like we are. We're talking about tourism earlier in the show, and some of these, the difficulty is going to be certainly in the second half of the year. So we need to be supporting these guys as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, what is the government? Are they sitting on a treasure chest of extra bandwidth? Or, I mean, how does it work? Are we tapped out of what the pipe's coming in? I just sort of think of it like water.
Well, you got to look at it two ways. So everybody knows that our wireless or mobile comes from a tower. But that most of those towers have radio antennas on them, and they're connected by usually these days fiber or some sort of hard network back to the core network. And there may be constraints in there, and that's something that providers, we've been talking to the wholesalers about. Is there something you can do to improve the amount of bandwidth in the back, what's called the backhaul network? So that's from the tower back to the network. Can you do something in there to make it faster and open the pipes a little bit further? It's not as easy as it sounds, but it can be done. The bit that the government controls is the airwaves, and that's from the tower down to you and your device. And there are some things they could do. They could make some spectrum available earlier, but it's not simple or straightforward.
Sorry, did we lose Craig there? No. Oh, sorry, he just went quiet. Sorry, he just went quiet all of a sudden, very quickly. I thought that the spectrum could have buffered.
Yeah. That would be great. Yeah, that's right. Hey, I'm on. Yeah, I think unfortunately, it's not a quick fix, and it never has been a quick fix for rural New Zealand, which is why we've been advocating on the behalf of rural for a good 15 years, and we still keep pushing that barrow. But we have seen improvement. So we do have to say that the government has invested significant amounts of our money through levying the other telcos to invest in rural New Zealand. We just cannot take our foot off the accelerator, because it's times like this that prove that broadband and connectivity is now a core utility.
Craig, have you had a yarn to Mr. Shane Jones recently? He's a new fan of farming in the provinces again.
Matthew Jones and I have had a few conversations over the years, and some of that money has gone in, and certainly one of the key projects that we're keen to keep an eye on is the Connected Marae project. We're very interested to see how that goes. Very keen to see it delivered very quickly, but we'd like to see more.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. This is Craig Young, the CEO of Tuans, a Telecommunication Users Association of New Zealand, sticking up for you, the user, to make sure that you're getting the best possible experience, and something that we are certainly going to need more and more of and protection of as this way of living and farming becomes more of the norm, as well as hopefully how you are enjoying consuming your media and your rural media content. Thank you so much for taking the time to join Sarah's Country tonight. I will be back tomorrow, and I'd really like to have a yarn to the team at Bidder, because a lot of people will be looking to trade stock online since the sale yards are shut, and there'll be a lot of questions about how. That's another new norm that we have to try and learn and get our way around. So I'll get in touch with the team there. But please, if you have any ideas of any guests that you would like, we have a huge newsroom, and I'm not telling you it's because I don't have a stack of 1 million people and stories. It's because I want to hear what you want to hear. So please make a comment on the Facebook below, or if you privately want to send me a message through any of my social media channels, or send me an email, sarah@puriummedia.com, and any of your suggestions that you would want on the show. And they are already flooding into my inbox after the first show last night. So obviously went off as a good success. Have a wonderful evening out there in rural New Zealand. If it's raining, I hope you've got the fire on, and you enjoy the rest of your night.